slowed down a bit, so we'll go ahead and get started. And again, for everybody that just joined us, thank you very much for being with us today. In honor of Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we wanted to put something on for our customers, any of our prospects out there, just to spread awareness mostly. And that's really key in all this. And that's why we brought on the experts we have on today. The cloud solutions team at the Eric Ryan Corporation, this is what we do. We spread awareness on newer technologies, and the biggest talk right now, the biggest buzz out there is cybersecurity. What do you do in case of a hack? How do you protect yourself? How do you defend yourself? And if it does happen, or when it does happen, how are you going to respond to that? So we got a lineup of some great experts that you guys are going to be able to talk to today. I also want to give a shout out to our partner, Lewis Plung and Company. They're an accounting firm that we actually use here at ERC, but the most important part is they saw the importance in cybersecurity awareness as well, and they're helping us spread that between our customers, their customers, and a lot of the people in the city of Pittsburgh who are actually on this call. So a big shout out to them for helping us and sponsoring this event with us as well. Before we get started here, I want to kind of start with a little joke before I get in the outline of the presentation. So I had a friend the other day who was all upset. I like to talk to him about it, and whenever we were all done, I just kind of patted him on the back and I said, "It's okay." I said, "The Prince of Nigeria is sad too right now, because after this call, after this webinar, nobody's going to fall for his emails anymore." So, I don't know how many of you will get that, but that's my dad joke for the day. But the outline of the presentation is right here. We have Josh Hazelhorst, who I'm going to introduce. He's going to do the outline of the presentation. He's going to moderate the whole panel throughout the whole process. We want to keep it as interactive as possible. There's a chat box at the bottom. Go ahead and submit your questions in there, any comments that you guys have. We'll have Josh answer those for you, as some of the panelists that are on the call right now. And stick around to the end. I hear we got some great prizes we're going to give away as well. So there's a good chance you guys could win some cool gift cards and everything else that we're giving away. So without that, I have Josh Hazelhorst. He's the cybersecurity sales engineer for Telarus. He's going to moderate the event for us, and has a wealth of knowledge in the cybersecurity industry as well. So go ahead and take over, Josh.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Doug. And events like this are great, because you've got end users out there that, it's just confusing. They're reading marketing slicks, they're reading stuff on news, they're seeing things on media, they're Googling stuff, they're buying countermeasures. And it's one of those things of, am I buying the right countermeasures? Am I managing it correctly? Do I have the staff, logistics, and operations to make me more cyber resilient, make me more cyber mature in my organization? It's not I bought a firewall at Home Depot's and I'm protected. That is not how this works anymore. And most end users just don't have the staff, can't afford to build a real cyber mature model. And that's where they need partners like Cyber Compass and Threat Protector and IGI to come to the table. The unfortunate part for end users is they don't know this, right? These guys are hard to find. I can go Google firewall and find 15 different firewall providers, but how do I find the professional organizations that can help me become more cyber resilient in my organization? The origination of this call is, what do I do if something happens? Well, that's not really accurate anymore, because something's going to happen. It's really, what do I have in place for when something happens? Do I have process and procedures and documentation? Do I know what to do steps 1 through steps 25? Or do I just go buy cyber insurance and pray that they pay for, auditors and data forensics guys, which, by the way, if I don't practice due care according to them, they're not going to pay out the policy anyway. So how do I do this, and how do I do it without breaking the bank? So these are awesome. Everybody, please put your questions in chat. At the end of it, we will have a Q&A session, so you'll be able to unmute. But this is really, it's interactive with everybody. Once we get through the presentations, we're just going to chit chat with all the panelists and talk about use cases and some horror stories and some great stories, right? So with that being said, I believe we're going to launch a poll to begin with. Or am I mistaken?
Yeah, 1 second.
Okay, I thought we were. There we go. So here's your quick poll. Answer, I think we're going to have a few questions, right? Answer that quick poll. And that just gives us kind of a gauge, an idea of where the consumers and the outside are at. Where is the thought process? Great to know. Great to know. 29% said yes, we do have a cyber awareness training program in place. That's awesome because that is absolutely the easiest and least expensive start to get people cyber aware. 64% said no. 7% said, I don't even know what you said. 64% that said no. This is a great seminar for you to be on because it really starts with that end user pushing the wrong button, clicking the wrong link, going to the wrong website. Not really malicious people looking to steal your personal information, your credit card data anymore. This year, most of the time, it's an accident. We do tests with our guys, and we have 3 or 4 now certified CISSPs on staff. One of our leads out of our cybersecurity practice, on a weekend, we just beat him to living death with spam, with sales emails, jcpenney.com, sears.com, amazon.com. And after about 20 of them in a row, we sent him another link with a blue unsubscribe me button. And guess what he did? And this is the leader of our cybersecurity program, right? Well, of course, it's a weekend. God, unsubscribe me. Enough of this, right? Well, gotcha. Right? So we could get anybody. And the whole idea is teaching your end users to be aware, hey, you know what? Maybe I should send this to IT to scrub before I open this link. We're not trying to beat anybody up or get anybody fired. We're trying to get them aware of the methodologies that these people use to breach into systems. With that being said, we're going to turn it over to Cyber Compass. Robert?
Thank you, Josh, and thanks to Eric Ryan for hosting this today. We're excited to be here and hopefully educate some people and learn from others too. They're starting off with my slide here. The only important bullet on that slide is right in the center, I love Snickers, and it is the original power bar, and I believe everybody should understand that. So you can go on to the next slide. Cyber Compass, real briefly, we're not a technology solution, so we're not software and hardware. We actually come in with a virtual cybersecurity team or cyber team, including a compliance officer, privacy officer, and an information security officer. And what sets us apart is we actually have a risk management platform that speeds up the process, tracks everything, documents everything. So we greatly improve the ability to get the cyber resilience faster and easier while augmenting your team. Next slide, please. I keep trying to click the button and it's just not working. So, so before we begin, I know there was a pre-webinar survey sent out, and just a few words on that. And hopefully, Josh, I'm not stealing your thunder from later or something like that. But in general, it sounds like, you know, we hear this all the time, but it's basically, I'm overwhelmed. I don't have a roadmap. I don't know where to start. You know, compliance is always changing. It's just, and it's hard to stay up with it. And then how do I address my vulnerabilities and keep up with those? And I would actually add to that, one of the things we see across the industries and clients that we deal with is most clients don't even know where all their data is, and they don't know all of their assets on the network, so they don't know if they've got total control or not. And so they don't know the data flow through their company. So it's very interesting when you start doing those things that people realize, wow, I've got a bigger, broader issue going on here. So hopefully I can give you a very quick mini roadmap today to help figure that out a little bit. On this slide, 70% of small companies aren't prepared. 14% believe they are prepared. We would argue that that may be a little high. And then the really important thing to realize is if you go through a major cyber attack or breach, it's likely that you'll be out of business in 6 months. So next slide, please. So you heard Josh talk about this, cyber resilience. You know, you've got this complexity issue and chaos and uncertainty and not knowing where to start. But the real goal here is cyber resilience. It's not cybersecurity, it's cyber resilience. We're going to talk more about that in the steps that we go through. And a little bit about cyber resilience is you really need, you can think of, if you've been involved with this, you can think of business continuity, but you're trying to anticipate anything that could happen to you in the cyber attack world. You want to be able to withstand that. You want to recover from it. So think of ransomware. And you need to be able to adapt to this. It's always changing and people are always trying to break in. So your system is always under cyber warfare, asymmetrical cyber warfare. So next slide. And I'm going to try to blow through this pretty quick, and you know, so you guys have time to talk to us at the end. I think that's important for you to be able to talk about this. Again, very simple roadmap I'm going to go through, so you can go ahead and go to the next step one. So Cyber Compass is talking about protection today. And anybody that's familiar with the NIST framework, you may look at this and go, wait a minute, identify risk is not part of protection. You can't start proper protection without identifying the risk. So every framework, every standard, every regulation that's out there in the cybersecurity world is going to tell you, you need to go start with a third-party security risk assessment. And it needs to be across people, processes, technology, and vendors. So another misnomer, misunderstanding in cybersecurity is, I'm going to go start with technology and it's an IT issue, when in fact it's not. It's a corporate issue. It's got to be done across the entire ecosystem. So next slide, please. So step 2, once you have done this risk assessment, you're going to have a prioritized list, which is really called the risk management plan in some of these frameworks and regulations. So from that, you now know what to start addressing first. So back to this roadmap. Step 1, do the assessment. Step 2, let's educate the people. So Josh mentioned this. One of the simplest, easiest things to do that was in that survey that you guys just took the poll, go have people start taking awareness training courses. Now, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, they said every 2 years, and then it became every 1 year. And we would tell you, you probably need to do it quarterly or at least semi-annual. So a lot of people say, well, we do training once a year, and it's like, it's not often enough. The other thing is, he mentioned phishing. You need to turn it on. It needs to run continuously, which is basically monthly. And then you need to have processes and procedures across your standard operating procedures that are cyber related. How do you protect the data and the company? And you need to make sure they're communicated out to your workforce. And then the remote workforce, even though it's been there for years, it really, this little thing called COVID about 18 months ago or so brought this to the forefront, forced 60% of workforces home, and they started using personal computers. We've had multiple clients or have gotten new clients because they were breached, and we started working to resolve their issues because of the remote workforce issues. So that needs to be addressed. So step 3, please. So the next one is document the processes. So when you get to compliance, part of compliance is document, document, document. If you don't have documentation, then you're not compliant. So the regulators, Fortune 500s, they're not going to give you credit for being there and doing the right thing. So you have to document it to know that. They all want you to start out with a risk management plan. Everybody thinks of that as a written document, which it can be. You should have a written document, but what it really is the prioritized list of risks that you need to address and resolve. You have to address them in some way. And then next step is really the strategic plans are big pieces of that. And then the policy and procedures are more of your operating procedures. So step 4 is what a lot of people think of in cybersecurity. It's hardening the technology. So what do I need to go out and buy for software or hardware? Do I need a new firewall? And I think, Josh, you talked about this a little bit. You know, it's what we all stereotypically think of as cybersecurity, but it's one of 4 areas that you need to really focus on. And it's one of 4 areas across the entire ecosystem. But again, you want to go and protect the data, which may be encryption. You want to control who's accessing the data and why, and control that by roles. You're going to implement these safeguards across your entire organization in the software and hardware for cybersecurity. And what you're trying to do in building cyber resilience is limit the impact of that. And I'm going to jump back to the top left corner on step 4 there, protect the data. So one of the things that you will learn as you go through this is the words confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And I'm not going to go in total details on that, but if somebody wants to ask me about it later, I will. But think of somebody laying on a surgery table in the hospital about to go into surgery, and you have a problem with the integrity of that data about that patient or the availability of that data. Whereas confidentiality is, there may be somebody that you don't really know what they're going to have surgery for. So let's see, step 5 is vendors. So a lot of people forget about this, but if you've got vendors, the Fortune 5000 are now requiring this. The federal government regulations are beginning to put this all in. Department of Defense. You now have to map out who all your vendors are and what data they have, and then you have to communicate that requirement to them, have agreements with them, and make sure they're providing proof of compliance back to you. And then also, we suggest that you require proof of cyber insurance by them. And then step 6 is really a rinse and repeat. So, you know, if you're going to protect your data, it doesn't stop. This just keeps going. You have to go back and monitor this. You really want to monitor your data flow and know what's going on. You're going to document your risk reduction as we talked about it. You're going to repeat this whole process, but you got to stay aware. The last three is be aware of the vulnerabilities, the new cybersecurity requirements, and the new regulations that are coming out. So it becomes a pretty heavy lift and full-time job, basically. And then we wanted to end with a little bit of humor here. It seems to be maybe it's the bad joke deal, but it's, see no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil. It's time to try something new. And we really talk about it's time to leave the castle defense concept of cybersecurity using hardware and software, which is a piecemeal approach, and move on to something else. And I think we're going to do questions and feedback at the end, if I'm not mistaken. So.
Yes, we are. And we're going to have an open forum too, so I'll all be able to chit chat with each other too, Robert. Thank you so much. Okay, Threat Protector, you are up.
All right, Threat Protector's here. All right, thanks, Josh. Okay, my name is Carl Katz. I'm Senior VP of Sales for Threat Protector. We are a cybersecurity company offering advanced security solutions and consultation to create a holistic cybersecurity posture for businesses out there. So we're going to run through this fairly quick. Obviously, reach out if you want to go deeper into your cybersecurity approach and posture as an organization. We could do a deep dive, bring on engineers, whoever we need to understand and map out a solution for your organization. That's, at the end of the day, what it's about. Every organization is different. A little bit about us. We're 4-year-old company, but in cybersecurity, it's like dog years, so we'll call ourselves 28 years old. But we're over 4-year-old company. A lot of users on our platform, and we're innovative. That's the most important thing. We're constantly advancing technology, and we are on top of it, on top of what's happening in the world today. Really big into compliancy, making sure that our customers meet compliancy standards. Even if you don't have compliancy standards, it's important to look at the top compliancy standards to make sure that eventually we get you there. So hitting those compliancy standards will severely mitigate the risk of you being breached, and that's what it's all about. So that's about us. So I got cut off at the bottom over here. So what happens when you're breached? Everybody knows. The average breach takes 127 days to detect. This is huge. There's only 2 ways for you to detect a breach. That's the easy way or the hard way, right? The easy way is if you implement one of our solutions, we detect the breach, we mitigate, remediate the actual breach and let you know. The other way is obviously like the call I was just on before this webinar, a company in Michigan, everybody's heard of the name, was breached. We're implementing our solution and obviously we're going to remediate. So a lot of damages, I think Robert mentioned. I mean, 60% of small and medium businesses are not going to survive a breach within a year. It's gone. And there's a lot of issues. Everybody heard of it. Everybody see it on the news. It's like the second pandemic out there. At first, nobody knew somebody who had a breach. Then people knew people who had a breach, and then people knew people who went out of business because of a breach, even large organizations. So it's happening all the time. It's the second pandemic, I'd like to say. So let's move on. Next slide. I mean, the challenges are cybersecurity solutions are fragmented. It's a big gray area out there, a lot of clouds, a lot of fog, smog, whatever you want to call it out there in cybersecurity. And organizations need a technology company to come in there, a cybersecurity company to come in there and understand holistically what you're doing to remediate the breach. Most organizations think that they have it down pat. In fact, they don't. There's some aspect of cybersecurity that's missing. I just posted something on LinkedIn today that an old password remained in the system, and an ex-employee went in and pulled information and created a breach. Okay, and that happens all the time. So password manager was obviously needed there. Okay, and we sell password manager products. So the market's changing quickly, and the actual breaches are evolving. The hackers are evolving. Remember, these are countries. These are nations and states that are actively involved in this. So unlimited access to resources, capital, people, all that. So ransomware. So ransomware is it's malware that people are asking for ransom. But malware in general takes 1.5 seconds to propagate within an organization. People don't understand that. It's quick. So it's important to have a mitigation or remediation strategy to detect that. On average, businesses get hit with 40,000 pieces of malware a day, believe it or not. 400,000 pieces of malware are created a day in the world. So it's significant, and it propagates through the system very fast. That's why instant detection and remediation is critical to survive, right? So let's go next slide. So there's 4 attack pillars, what you should understand. I think Robert emphasized some of this before. So employees, right? 70% of all breaches happen because of employees. Absolutely, this is where we started with training. We have an amazing training platform to train your people, regular phishing, regular exams, micro quizzes, and we have a scoring metrics we utilize actually to maintain and understand each employee's cybersecurity posture and the organization holistically. So employees are big. The second attack pillar is IT network infrastructure, firewalls, cloud programs, accessing passwords, another attack pillar. Endpoints are another attack pillar, right? Meaning that they go right through endpoints. They bypass the firewall in many cases because people are working from home. As the world becomes more virtualized, it's critical to create a strategy that answers the questions on, hey, how do I protect myself better as an organization when I have virtual machines, when I have servers and all these different pieces of equipment that's dispersed globally in many cases, right? So endpoints is another method of attack that need to be looked at. And of course, email security. So email security is critical, all right? And all of these fall under compliancies, different compliancies. Healthcare is HIPAA, PCI for credit card. You have NIST compliancy, which a lot of organizations utilize as a baseline for their compliancy standards. And then, of course, you have things like Sarbanes-Oxley for financial, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we meet all of these requirements with all of our products, right? And we hold at least one product associated with every one of these attack pillars. So that's what we're going to do holistically. We're going to look at your organization and look at the attack pillars, you know, the attack pillars, and then work backwards and say, okay, let's create a plan. And every plan is different for every business. So we take it like a house approach, right? Robert, this is not a castle approach. This is a house approach, okay? So let's look at the house approach, right? Securing a house. You got to prevent, the name of this, detect, and respond, just like owning a house. Okay, you got to prevent by, you know, exterior lighting, garage door, signage, etc. Okay, that prevents intruders hopefully from coming in. But, okay, if they decide to make a move and they want to come into your house, you got to, you know, have motion sensors, network watch, smoke detectors, all that stuff, and video cameras, right? All that's popular these days. People are doing a better job protecting their house than their business, which is scary. And then, of course, respond, right? And then you want to have an alarm, and you want to have maybe a weapon, who knows, right? Whatever you want to do, a bat, whatever the case may be, but you want to be able to respond to the threats effectively, which, next slide, which is like a cybersecurity solution protecting your business. Prevent, okay, forensic investigation, right? Password management, right? Prevention, cybersecurity awareness training. It's proactivity, okay, and then being reactive. Of course, it's a lot better to be proactive than reactive, and that's why it's critical to have a consultation with a cybersecurity professional and discuss a proactive approach to countering the cybersecurity threat out there. And we want to talk about prevention, we want to talk about detection, and we want to talk about response and remediation. And that's what we want to do. We want to build that, you know, your defenses, and have that discussion on how to do that. So next slide. So this is our motto, guys. Don't be the ones that that fall into this category. We just had a customer sign up a little month and a half ago. We presented last October to them a solution, great solution, and they came back to us, 9 months later and said, "Hey, we're interested." Well, what happened? Well, they got hit. They got breached. If they had our solution, they wouldn't have been breached. It was determined. Everyone has a plan until they're punched in the face. So, you know, that is our motto. A lot of times we go out there and proactively say, hey, you know, what's your plan? Talk to us. What are you doing right now to mitigate the risk? What are you doing to remediate in case something happens? Piece of software tries to get in. And they're like, well, we have firewall. We're good. You know, we have endpoint protection. We're good. Okay. In fact, those are baseline products, okay, that organizations need to have. No matter what size business you are, there is a plan associated with this, with who you are and what you're trying to accomplish from a cybersecurity perspective. So the products we have will assist with all of that. And I think one more slide maybe. Oh, that's it. This last slide. So we're gearing up for war. The threat is real. That's my hashtag. The threat is real. And let us help you build that cybersecurity defense, proactive and reactive strategies associated with cybersecurity.
Awesome, Carl. Thank you. And I see it every day, right? Is people reach out to us after they got punched in the face, right? There's definitely a better way to do this. And then instead of buying countermeasures or whatever, or they'll buy countermeasures, but how many times do you hear that conversation of, oh, I hired an IT guy, man. My IT guy's responsible for that. Well, your IT guy is only responsible at 10% of cybersecurity. He does not know the strategic vision of the company. He doesn't know what the critical assets. He doesn't know the monetary value of said critical assets. Therefore, how would he possibly know which countermeasures to deploy and at what budget? He has no idea. He's an IT guy. You hired him to keep your businesses and your blinky lights running. You did not hire him to be a visionary, strategic investor of the firm, right? So he's got no idea how to do this, and that's where we get in trouble is, oh, I'm just going to go to my local parts department and buy whatever they told me to buy. That is not how to do cybersecurity, right? IGI, Kim, you're up.
Hi, I am Kimberly Moore. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you. With IGI Cybersecurity, you can go to our slide. I'm the National Channel Manager, so my role is a direct liaison between Eric Ryan and IGI. And what I do is I assemble a team of experts. One of my colleagues here is Ken Barnaby, who's the Inside Channel Manager. We've both been around cybersecurity going on about a decade total for both of us. IGI is based in Rochester, New York. We've been around for about 38 years. So a long time experience in managing and helping clients build out those cyber defenses. Ken, you want to say hi and then we can get started?
Absolutely, pleasure. Thank you for everyone taking a few minutes out of your day to have a quick conversation with us around awareness and incident response. So greatly appreciate everyone's time and hopefully everybody has some value and look forward to the panel discussion here after our presentation.
Great, thank you. So respond, it really is kind of like the backbone and working with the pillars of protect and detect. So really what we're trying to do here is build, a holistic cybersecurity program before you have an incident. But if you do and you have to respond, then the goal is to minimize that impact and contain the impact of that cybersecurity incident. Next slide, please. So Ken, what actions can a company take if they have an incident?
Yeah, it's very important to have that plan in place, right? It's not if, but when. Josh has been saying it. Everybody's been saying it. It's not a matter of I have all these safeguards in place and I'm good. I just go out throughout my day with business. And back to Carl's side, you're going to get punched in the face, and it's scary. It's sad. But if you have a plan in place and you know the roles and responsibilities, it makes it not hurt so bad. It's going to hurt. Don't get me wrong. It's going to hurt. You're going to pay some stuff, but hey, get a plan in place, communicate. And we've broken it down to these, some 7 steps, right? It's very important to communicate with internal resources, outside resources. First couple of those first phone calls you should be calling on is, Eric Ryan, your cybersecurity insurance if you have one, your legal, your general counsel. These are people that can help. A lot of organizations don't know where even to start. My first phone call would be to Eric Ryan, for his clients. Hey, I need help. We're locked out. Systems are down. Even if you just I think there's something fishy going on. It's never too early, right? So I'd rather have phone calls saying, hey, you know what, you're good. It's just a spoof email, nothing to worry about, versus having that hard down 4 p.m. phone call before a holiday, and then it's all hands on deck all weekend. So it's very important to have a clear and concise roadmap for the responding.
Thank you. Next slide. Great. So the components for responding, right, is essentially you need to have a technique to contain, again, like I said, the impact of the incident. And these are the plans, the technologies, and processes to respond to that attack. This is where your policies and procedures will come into play. Training and staff, all need to be considered on how you're going to execute this plan. We worked with a trucking company earlier this year. They had a very large ransomware attack. It was a multi-million-dollar attack, and they had no plan. They were scrambling. A lot of mistakes were made. So, by being prepared, you can, again, help minimize that attack. Okay, next slide, please. So, Ken, how would you start with the response planning?
Yeah, first, again, make sure you develop that plan, you implement it, you practice it, start taking those actions. You want to find techniques that can impact the incident positively. So you want to make sure you're including everybody that's involved, everyone from HR to your IT director, to your CFO, to your CEO. Everybody is involved when it comes to an incident. And we've seen a lot of times where communication is broken down, where not everybody knows their roles and responsibilities, and bad things can happen. And we've unfortunately have seen that firsthand with organizations, trying to help and not knowing the direct responsibilities that they have, and actually did more harm than good. And when it comes to that, so again, making sure that you have the people, the process, the technologies in place to respond, and it's make sure it's a rapid executable process. Time is of the essence when things like this happen. So when you're down, you're hard down. So when you have these plans in place, you're essentially losing money, right? When that business is shut down, all because of a cyber incident. That's not even taking into consideration the cost it takes you to get back up and running, hiring the third-party organizations, and crossing your fingers or praying, or however you want to do it, that there's no legalities that come to the backside of you.
Great, thank you. Next slide. Communications, this is a big one, and this is where Ken kind of alluded to, is contacting your legal counsel. And one of the reasons you want to do that is you want to keep as much attorney-client information or privilege into those communications. It can actually save your company a lot of money by it not being disclosed publicly. So you need to really look at your procedures on the threat sharing of information, the prompt sharing of information. Depending on what type of company you are in, right, is whether you have regulatory requirements or if there are state requirements for sharing that incident, or we don't say breach because that's a legal term, but if you have an incident that you have to share that information with third parties, you want to make sure that your information is scrubbed of any sensitive data. It's very important. So you want to establish your processes for reviewing, sanitizing, and protecting the threat information before you give it to a third party. We had a child detention center that we were working with here in Texas when we had unaccompanied minors here. We were working with a company, and they were having a lot of leakage, Twitter leaks. So, that's something else on your policies and procedures. You need to have a social media policy, because you don't want people leaking information, one, of where facilities are, information about executives or executive movements. That can be quite scary. Next slide, please. Ken, what can they do to review and analyze their data if there is an incident?
Yeah, we call this the Tiger Team. So you want to make sure, again, that you have a group of individuals that can respond to this incident, determine where that unauthorized data access happened, any inappropriate system usage, malicious code infections, denial of service. So you want to make sure you have a nice holistic view on the incident. Technologies are fantastic. You got to have them, but you also have to wrap the people, the process, and the expertise around it as well. So making sure that you have that in your knowledge, in your database, to know, okay, I know I can call Eric Ryan. I know that they have the right resources in hand. I think I have this contained, but that only goes so far. So we just came off a call here about 3 hours ago where something very similar. They're a marketing company. their URLs got blacklisted and they were literally shut down. They couldn't send emails. They could, but it kept getting filtered out by Google because they were blacklisted. So it is very important that they know the first person to call, who to handle it, and how do we get them back up online as fast as possible. So they knew that process, and we're working it as we speak.
Thank you, Ken. Next slide, please. Our final slide, Josh. So improvement. So this is going to be probably one of the biggest things that you can do of your incident response is look at lessons learned. So what went wrong? How are you going to mitigate those vulnerabilities? And what can you do to improve your processes, technologies, and systems going forward? It's also a great way to review how your incident response team handled it internally or externally if you need to hire from external. And then looking at it for a budget review as well. Is this something that you need to invest in to really shore up those defenses? So that's all we have, Josh. I can save my example for the panel, but we do have a great example on lessons learned.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Ken. I believe we're going to launch a poll before we get into the panelist discussion. All right. This is a yes, no, unsure. Do you feel you have more resources and a better understanding to prepare for a cyber attack after this webinar at this point? Yes, no, unsure. Wow, great. 92% yes. A couple still kind of unsure, and I get it. Me too. I put myself in your shoes all the time, and nobody has gotten nothing out of it. So that's awesome. Okay, let's open up to the panelist discussion. So all panelists unmute. People, please keep continuing to add your questions into the chat. We'll try to get to them. We've got about, looks like 15, 20 minutes that we can have this discussion. So we're kind of going to go over some use cases, thoughts, ideas. Ken, we're going to start with you. You mentioned a trucking company that had some kind of incident. I was involved with you on that one. A call came in on a Friday night at midnight, and the team was freaking out. This happened to be a ransomware attack that ended up being what's called Maze, M-A-Z-E, which is one of the most insidious ransomware attacks on the planet. It is linear in the way it does its activity, meaning this trucking company starts on the east coast of the U.S. They have a follow the sun opening methodology because of time zones when they need to open to sell their trucks, right? And every time a new store opened, it connected back to corporate HQ via VPN. And guess what? I got you too. Now, having a process, procedure, documentation, incident response plan, stuff like that in place would have told me, the network guy, the CIO, the CTO, what do I do to make sure not all these guys start connecting to me so I don't get you too. Now, Kim, a couple of years ago, we had the same exact conversation with this trucking company. And we were talking about building a plan, talk about building process, procedures, documentation, incident response management, all this other stuff, right? And the answer was, nah, my IT guys do that. And then a year and a half later, my question to you, Kim, is the proposed cost when we initially talked to them about building a correct framework and an incident response plan versus the actual incident response cost. What was the delta?
That's a great question because it was $92,000 for the virtual CISO. So that would have given them a full team building out the policies and procedures on the NIST framework, which is a really strong cybersecurity defense framework, giving them, doing the training, right? So if an incident happened, looking at that data flow. So just what you're talking about, the follow the sun, right? Looking at that data flow on how the information flow through their company. It also helped them with being prepared to shut things down when they needed to pull things offline. Helping people not to click on things because this was a phishing attack. What happened? Also, we would have had some technologies in place to be able to detect. So the threat actors were in there well over 90 days. before they launched their payload. And this was one of the most insidious attacks. It also included SIM card swaps. So they were actually watching everything that the executive team was talking about. And they were down for a few days. They did have cyber insurance. Cyber insurance, though, wanted to bring in their MSP and put Sentinel-1 on it. Really wouldn't have helped with them. The incident response ended up costing $250,000.
Yeah, so close to triple to fix it versus a third to be proactive. And what else does Maze do, right? Because we have these guys that, I'm a cybersecurity expert, I'm going to teach my end users how to do this. Oh, just get a good backup recovery archive solution. Well, Maze being a linear attack posture, guess what? Now I get into your backups, I delete your backups. So I'm backing up from what? Nothing, right? So that was my point originally when we had this conversation, was you can't just buy countermeasures from your parts guy that wants to sell you whatever he's getting spiffed on that month. That doesn't work, right? Carl, you hear it all the time. I got a guy. I'm a CEO, CTO. I got a CIO. I can't hire CISSPs. I can't hire VCSOs. I don't have the money for all this in logistics and operations. But my guy that I hired that graduated ITT Tech a couple years ago and knows how to build a print server is now my cybersecurity architect, right? This doesn't work, right? I expect you, Carl, I hired you to be my IT guy, and I expect that you're going to keep me protected. And when something happens and you didn't keep me protected, I'm blaming you, aren't I?
Yeah, so there's multiple facets here, and building a cybersecurity, effective cybersecurity posture is a layered approach. And it's impossible, first of all, to keep up with all of the technologies and the changing technologies that happen all the time, right? So you have somebody in your organization, it's an IT director, IT manager, even a CISO, somebody in the organization. It's impossible. You know, there's all different types of threats happening every day from all different attack pillars and vectors, right, that are coming in, and it's impossible to do that. As a matter of fact, it's impossible to monitor your network 24/7. Speak of that. That's why there's a need for, you know, like a managed security operations center scenario where somebody's actually monitoring the network 24/7. So whether you have an effective leader or not, or effective people in your IT department or not, it's just impossible to go at it on your own. You need people to create that solution that monitors the network 24/7, that is consultative in their approach, that understands the threat landscape, right, and what you need to do to not only be proactive and, you know, with threat hunting within your organization, from not only an employee but a machine perspective, to being reactive and talk about remediation out there and discuss about cyber security insurance even. So just a real quick aside here, we deal with companies that are applying for cyber insurance all the time. And up until a year ago, the form was one page. You'd fill out one page and you'd get cyber insurance. And it'll be like, hey, thank you. Now it's 5 pages. And even that, you're not guaranteed to get cyber insurance, right? So they look at basic compliancy standards like NIST, which is type of a federal government standard, as a base compliancy, and look at it and say, okay, well, do you have these things in place, and how effective are they? So you can't even bring it in place right away. They're going to want to see it in place for a little bit and see how effective. That's why it's important to be reactive when it comes to cybersecurity in every aspect of it. But that's happening in the world today.
Yeah, and I see it. I mean, I have these calls every day, right? Hey, there was an incident. I called my cyber insurance carrier. They asked me, what was their first question? Show me your documentation. Show me your policies and procedures. Show me that you practice due care so I can pay out the so I can pay out you can't show me the documentation, policies, and procedures. That's a denied claim. So I'll take your premiums. Remember what an insurance company is designed to do. It's to take premiums. It's not to pay out. We don't have, CEO corporate junkets in the Bahamas because we pay out, right? Our job is to take in the premiums, and if you do not show me that you're practicing due care, I don't pay out. So you can pay me as much as you want, right?
And they've been hit hard. You're right. Robert, they've been hit hard, for sure.
Oh, yeah. So, Robert, what if I'm a small, medium business, man? I got some IT guys. They seem to know what they're doing. I've never been hit. I'm not really that afraid. I don't really know my assets. I don't really know what I should protect and how much money I should spend on them. frankly, I don't even know what compliance and what organization it should be. If I'm on NIST, ISO, CMMC, SYS-18, how do you expect an end user to even know how to do this?
That's a that's a great question. And I think all of us deal with that and when we first start out with clients. Back to IGI's trucking company, we had an insurance company and they had been breached. They called us after the fact. They'd already gone through their respond and stuff, and they still didn't know what they ought to be doing, for cybersecurity and compliance. And we're like, well, you're a financial corporation. You've got to start with a financial based approach, basically. But that's still NIST. It still goes from there. So it's difficult for these guys to know in general. I mean, there are some standards that everybody should base it on. NIST, CSF, we've talked about cybersecurity framework. We like the CIS 20 framework for smaller companies for general cybersecurity. It's fairly easy. It doesn't kill them to try to go through it. NIST 171 is just so painful. We try to avoid it for small companies unless they're in DoD. Obviously, HIPAA, you have to go through it for healthcare. We use New York DFS Reg 500 for insurance and financial services. So there's some standards out there that are pretty obvious, but then you get into companies we have software companies that have to run through 4 regulations. They're running HIPAA, CIS 20, ISO 27001, and GDPR. So, that becomes painful. They just literally are like, just tell us what to do, tell us how to get everything corrected and how to address it all. Yeah, it's a difficult task and eventually, Carl, your statement, you need a team. It's one of the reasons you come and ask for a consultant firm. We've been dealing with multiple industries, multiple clients, and we have multiple people doing that. So therefore, we're aware of all of this. So another prime example was the insurance company. The state of New Jersey asked them to fill out a 472 question survey to continue accessing the DMV system. And they looked at this and go, we don't know how to answer any of the questions.
Right.
And they're like, so we're only 472 short, so that's another example, right? It's overwhelming. It's what we said at the beginning. I think all of us sort of mentioned that. It's overwhelming that the participants said that, right? I'm overwhelmed. I don't know where to start. So.
Yeah. And let's face it, I mean, we're all cybersecurity professional, never happened. Spend money on me and now, good Lord. So Kim, when I'm an IT guy and you hired me to be your cybersec dude, I hear all this stuff on the news. I go Google things, right? You know what? I don't even know where to start, right? So I'm going to start with maybe a penetration test. I'm going to Google free pen test and I'm going to launch a penetration test in my environment, right? And that's going to tell me what's wrong with doing that.
Well, one is that if you're just doing a pen test or a vulnerability assessment, it's just a point in time. So at that time, where are your vulnerabilities? Really, you should look at, a bigger picture, like a security assessment, doing a comprehensive overview of, looking at your entire organization. Again, let's talk to the people that are doing it and people that are in your organization that have access to your most sensitive data. And how are they utilizing things? How are they, apps and systems? How is the data, again, flowing through? Again, it's about protecting your critical assets. So you should be doing it there, looking at what resources you have in place for your technologies. Are they up to date? Are they really useful? Are they being underutilized? If you look at the Target breach, right? They had all the systems in place, but people were tired of looking at the SIM. They were tired of the blinky lights. They got blinky light fatigue. And, they didn't have any control measures for change control. When the facilities people decided to put in the IoT devices for HVAC, they didn't talk to the security team. So the security team wasn't even aware that they were on their system, and they just opened up big holes into their network. The threat actors came in, started gathering up the credit card information, and were actually data mining the information on Target servers. Target didn't realize that they were there until they did the data dump and extracted all that information. So I know that Ken gets a lot of requests for pen tests and vulnerability assessments. Ken, how do you kind of lead people down the direction of, let's not do just this little simple test. Let's really look at what we can do for the organization.
Ken, you and I both, I see results of pen tests all the time, right? And if it's not paired with a risk management, plan, if it's not paired with business impact reports, so great, somebody left port 80 open. Okay, I'm the IT guy. CEO never knows this. So what? CEO has a bad username and password. I'm the IT guy. You never know this. Who cares, right? All you're showing me is stuff I probably already know. But from the C-suite, and this is where the C-suite in IT is kind of, I wouldn't say disinfected, but completely separate, is what's the business impact of that username and password being bad, Ken? What's the business impact of a port being open in a web server? How does that affect me, the guy that writes the checks?
Yeah, absolutely. They're going to be writing a bigger check, right? So, that's essentially, where it is. And we've seen it so much lately. And I would even say 18, 24 months ago, that was the shoe-in, right? Is the pen test vulnerability assessment. Now we're getting, well, great, I have this. How do I remediate any of this? Or exactly what you just said, Josh. Yeah, I know it's there, but I don't have time to do it. I don't have the budget for it. I can't get buy-in from my management to replace this. Going back to doing some sort of framework and building it out, a holistic business approach. It's a business problem, right? We had one where the technician left the laptop in an Uber and it had all kinds of sensitive information on it. Why is that the IT guy's problem? That's an HR problem. So being able to build it around the entire company and have everybody aware is really the route that we need to go as a community of cybersecurity specialists.
So we talk about enterprise, we see breaches all the time. We talk about mid-market. What about that micro business? What if I'm just the owner of my own lawnmower shop? I don't have an IT guy. I bought some equipment from Fry's Electronics to get me onto the interweb so I can do business. Man, I can't afford thousands and thousands of dollars a month in an MRC model. I can't pay you $100,000 to come in and fix me. What can I do that is affordable to at least, I know I can't do everything properly, but at least I could do something. What is that? What is that low-hanging fruit that I could do as a small business owner?
Is that to me?
I would say, who's that to?
That's to all of you. Yeah, Carl, we'll start with you.
Okay. So there's different products that are pretty low cost, low expense, and really has a big punch. Obviously cybersecurity training is easy, fairly inexpensive and critical in really adapting to your team to the right methodology as it pertains to, having them have a good cyber hygiene, like we like to say, right? That's really critical. Password manager is another piece, another thing you can sell them. Password manager is easy, where the organization controls the passwords and actually can block passwords and actually use geography to geo-block passwords from different areas and use different types of technologies like that, which is critical, right? When when employee leaves, or two-factor authentication, right? Those are things you can do that are fairly inexpensive, and you can start there, right? So you can take a large approach, but really not necessary. Endpoint protection, of course, right? A robust endpoint protection product is critical, right? Which is fairly inexpensive also, right? And pulling information from endpoint that actually is proactive and learning, right? As opposed to just a McAfee or a Norton or something like that, which really doesn't protect your business. Just to give one reference, we monitor in our Managed Security Operations Center product, we monitor 112 different types of feeds, right? All the different endpoint protection products and all the different types of, EDRs. We actually monitor these. And in this one case, we just did a demo, and we actually installed the actual product. And in one case, for example, only 7 out of 112 endpoint protections, EDRs that we monitor, detected a piece of malware, right? So it's important to start creating those layers within your organization. Okay, even if you're a small organization, there's some simple things you can do and simple products that are inexpensive to start that journey. And then you can work up from there. As your business grows, we can grow your cybersecurity posture as well.
So Josh, I have one.
So yeah, I see that, Doug. I'm going to ask it right now. Give me something easy, guys, and something that everybody on the call can understand, right? Pandemic hit. I sent everybody home. Everybody's working remote. How do I make sure that not only they're protected, but I'm protected in a low-cost manner?
I was going to say that the first
Robert?
thing
Carl?
anybody and every, am I, I'm muted. Okay. The first thing I was going to say
Yeah,
is
go.
no matter who you are, no matter how big, what size you are, you start with backups. If you don't have recoverable backups that you can go get and recover this thing and start over, you're already done. You're not going to survive. And that's why most companies collapse is they go focus on cybersecurity when in fact you have to, for cybersecurity, you have to focus on business continuity first. And that's
Yeah,
important.
absolutely. And we hear it all the time, right, Robert, is, oh, my IT guy's going to go buy a next-gen firewall.
Yeah.
Whoa, dude, that's not going to help you at all with your backup recovery archive solution.
Right. So we always talk, and I think Carl and both IGI, I think, mentioned this, business impact analysis. And people are like, why do I need that? Well, you need to know what you can't take a hit on. And the second thing I tell small companies, we just preach to small companies is move the liability out of your computer room that has no security and no backups and put it in the cloud. Now you've moved, it's their responsibility to back it up. It's their responsibility to protect it. And it's their responsibility for liability. But you've taken a lot of pressure off of yourself and your IT guy by just move the application. And a lot of people don't want to do that, but they need to understand that. That's important to understand. And to answer your last question, add a VPN for remote
I was just going to say, go ahead.
I mean, it's older technology, but it's easy and cheap.
VPN, I'm not a fan of VPN, secure remote access, VPN as a service providers, backbone providers, stuff that's going to get that congestion off of my network or to protect that end user, absolutely. And the backup thing, we talk about it all the time. I don't have any budget or whatever. We'll make budget. Because the cheapest solutions you can possibly do is end user awareness training and a good backup recovery plan. That's the cheapest stuff you can possibly do. So at least start there, right?
Right. And I would add, Nodeware, right? So Nodeware is our vulnerability management platform, $750 a year to monitor 50 assets. It does it, on any device that has an IP address, and it works for work from home because we have an agent. Now that's a product, if you want to have a very inexpensive strategy, we have a vCISO program starting at $2,000 a month. So for the price of an admin, you get a full vCISO security team to come in and augment your team to help, make sure that you have everything in place that you need to protect yourself, because being reactive is a lot more expensive.
Yeah, in fact, I was just dealing with a guy this morning, came out of West Texas. Oh, I'm just going to hire my own CISSP, my own CISO. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're expecting to spend $60,000 a year on a guy that makes $250,000 a year? I'm not sure how that's possible, right? You do that in a vCISO. You cannot do that in my W-2 guy. And if you can, that guy's not very good at what he does. I promise you.
Josh, can I interrupt you really quick?
Yeah, we're at the top of the hour, so we're done. Go ahead.
I have a question really quick from someone. How has a sudden shift to remote working impacted cybersecurity?
Yeah, I mean, we can all hit that a little bit, but I'll hit it first is I don't know what that end user is doing. I don't know if their machines are clean. I don't know if they're picking up anything in flight. I don't know if they're bringing malicious code into me. I give them a VPN from my Cisco AnyConnect or my Palo Alto Global Connect or whatever. That just opened my front door to hear from them. Now I get to go anywhere in your house, right? I mean, I get to go there securely, but now I get to go in the kitchen, the bedroom, the dining room, the basement. I get to go anywhere, right? No. You need to implement better policies, procedures in place. You need to implement things like zero trust, secure remote access, stuff like that. And I got a VPN isn't good enough. Or how do I really fix it? I call my guys over at Eric Ryan and say, help me. That's how you really fix it.
That's right. That's right. The Eric Ryan team's always here to help, whether the case is cybersecurity, unified communications, contact center, whatever you call it. We're your guys to give you a hand here. So I just want to thank the panel and especially Josh for moderating all this. We're going to get into the prizes now for everybody. I'm sorry we went over. I apologize. We went over just a little bit, but with all this information, it's hard to cram it in for an hour.